Have you ever had a secret desire to become a musician burning deep within you to write and record songs relating to your Christian faith?
Yeah, you're not the only one who's sung in front of the mirror or in the shower, John, I promise you. There are many aspiring Christian artists, but for some, the journey can become frustrating when they don't experience the success they first envisioned.
Well, former producer of BBC Songs of Praise, Channel 4's People Get Ready, and a member of the UK gospel group The Soul Seekers, Roy Francis, has written a new book called How to Make Gospel Music Work for You.
It really offers guidance on the Christian music industry, insights into the origins of gospel music right here in the UK. We began by asking Roy if he remembered his first experience of worship right here in the UK as a young boy.
It's a little bit foggy because I was 7 years old when I came, and my parents were Christians, meaning they both are not alive now. So the house was always a house of prayer, hymns, singing, and worship. And we started first in my parents' front room, and we went to church in a rented hall before my father's own church. So yes, I do remember worship.
And your father, T.G. Francis, became a bit of a pioneer in particularly the Black Pentecostal movement in London. What did it look like, and how did he help shape it back in the 50s and 60s?
Well, he was one of the earliest Black Pentecostal church minister leader. There were only a handful of church leaders then. How he helped to shape it, it's difficult to summarize. Only I can say that because he started a church, because he grew the church and the church became known as successful, it became an example to other churches. And that way I think he helped to shape it. And in particular, our church was well known for music. In fact, in the 70s, our church was considered the American church because we adopted an American style of worship, American style of singing. We had a Hammond organ where most churches didn't have a Hammond organ. And Leslie Speaker, you can't get more American gospel than a Hammond organ and a Leslie Speaker.
That wonderful sound, I remember them well. What was there resistance from traditional churches about this influx? I mean, was there racism because of that? Here's a church, here's people coming in from another country, worshipping in a different style. Was there kind of a mixture of jealousy and racism in there?
There was generally racism. I mean, I'd be wrong to deny that, of course, in society at large. Interestingly enough, when West Indians first came in 1948 and 50s and early 60s, they were generally welcomed to the country because the country needed workers and it needed help and it needed reconstructing after the war. So these people were generally welcomed. But as more and more began to come, and we've come round in a circle, haven't we, on this, in numbers in the 60s, people became apprehensive. And they showed, that's the indigenous population, they showed their disquiet by rejecting these newcomers and being racist towards them, yes.
Right.
And this was the case even within members of the church, you would say?
In this regard, that when West Indians came here, I use the term West Indian as opposed to Caribbean, and I can explain that in a minute. But when West Indians came here, those who belonged to the traditional churches in the West Indies, the established church, let me say, the Methodists, the Baptists, the Anglicans, they naturally looked for churches locally to worship on a Sunday. And many of those were rejected, cold shoulders. Some were even told not to come back again. Wow. And many of them, unfortunately, left faith and has never returned. The Pentecostal Christians, some of them were also Pentecostals. They had a different experience. What they did, and I make this clear in the book, they went looking for other Pentecostals to hold services. And they met in people's home and began to hold what we call prayer meetings. And that actually is the origin of most of the major Black Pentecostal churches in this country. They started from prayer meetings.
And this influx of West Indians, of Caribbeans, brought in their own music. And that was, you say, the start of gospel music in the UK. I've always thought of it as coming from America somehow, but...
Well, gospel music, yes, gospel music in its pure form came from America, but there was West Indian church music. West Indian church music morphed and developed and grew and was influenced by American gospel music, and then, of course, American gospel music took over and became the main music of our churches. But before that, there was West Indian church music, and a lot of that music actually were hymns and influenced by some of the folk songs and some of the indigenous music that came from the Caribbean.
And who were some of the pioneers, some of the names in those early days? Apart from the obviously the famous UK gospel group, the Soul Seekers. I believe you know a bit about them.
I know a little bit about the Soul Seekers, yes, because I was a member of the Soul Seekers. They were one of the first early Christian gospel groups in this country. Their music was influenced, interesting, by Hank Marvin, Cliff Richards, fame, and two of the key people in the group were, one was a Hank Marvin fan, the other one was a Bob Dylan and a Jimi Hendrix fan.
Wow.
So interestingly, the music was a fusion of these two influences plus Caribbean or West Indian church music, and they interestingly fused these three music to create a sound that was particular and at the same time acceptable to a West Indian Christian church ear. In those days, still is, West Indian church Christians tend to be rather conservative in their thinking, even their musical taste. So if that music sounded anything that was too secular, it would have been rejected. But the genius of these two guys who ran the Soul Seeker was to keep this music in acceptable limits and in a way that was palatable to West Indian Christian.
Right.
Incredible, wonderful to hear that. I know you worked with People Get Ready and producing things like Songs of Praise as well. You produced both. What was working in the mainstream media like?
Well, Britain have always had, I believe, a love affair with gospel music. The music industry has a love affair. Still is in love with gospel music. It's no coincidence that Kingdom Choir is doing well. Mm-hmm. It's no coincidence that Stormzy came out with that hit record of his that many people didn't realize was a gospel song until they thought through it. Hang on, the lyrics are all gospel in it. Yeah. So there's always been that latent interest in the music. So when I had the opportunity to produce People Get Ready, what we were trying to do is to just showcase this music that means so much to us, that gives us so much joy and pleasure. And of course, when I went to Songs of Praise, then we did all kinds of programs. Songs of Praise is very particular on its format. So I did programs from all over the country as per the format, and occasionally I'll be asked to do a couple of gospel programs and showcase the music that way. But for 365 program, we didn't have many doing gospel. I wish we had more. Why not? If they can, that's fine. It's, if you go to America, and even in this country, some of the premier Christian musicians and in America, premier gospel artists are making a living from their music. There's a huge market in America. There's a developing market in this country. It will grow. There's a wide Christian community. There's millions of people who are Christians, so the music can appeal to those and appeal to people who are non-Christians. So if they can make a living from it, then why not?
I know that in America, people can not only make a living from it, but that can also get very wealthy on it. Some of the top people. Never forget when Amy Grant some years ago was at a reception where a record company thanked her for the latest album and presented her with a British brand new Jaguar car as a little extra.
Wow!
Thank you very much
for
making
all like one of those. A little extra. We'd all like one of those as a little extra.
Clearly, they were exceedingly pleased with the amount of money she was making. I mean, it can be a distraction, can't it? That's the danger, isn't it?
It's like everything else, it's what you bring to it, it's the purity of your heart and what the intentions are. Yes, of course, because it's Christian music, it has a wider remit. It's trying to reach people with the love of God, explain to them about the love of God. But at the same time, it's an art form. Because it's an art form, it gives people a lot of pleasure. People can come to Christ via the music. And if you can earn a living from it, why not? I mean, it's an art form, great painters, great sculptures, they earn a living, great musicians.
Radio presenters,
Radio
John
presenters
Pentry.
even.
Really?
Can you maybe give us some practical advice for those who are pursuing a career in gospel music? What would be the top message that you'd have? I don't want you to give away too much from your book. What would you say now?
Well, the first thing gospel artists or any artists or independent artists need to recognize is how much the music industry and the music business has changed. Most artists now are independent. Very few have record deals and very few are going to get record deals because the record company itself is under tremendous pressure. And they don't do what they used to do back then, is develop artists in the way that they used to. They're not doing that to that extent now. So therefore, people are independent. The industry has changed. Technology has made it easier for people to make records, artists to make records. So therefore, they need to know a few things if they're going to stand a chance of succeeding with their music. And in the book, I make a number of tips, suggestions, and these are personal ideas, not scientific. Things I've gleaned over the years, one of which is finding the money to record your music won't guarantee you success. It's only one part. And then I go on to say, from the start, decide on the identity of your music. It's too much of everything and not enough of one thing. An artist is heading down the wrong road. Especially today when music is so niche, when market's so niche, when people can decide on the music they want to hear, not what artists are giving to them. So these are some of the ideas. Well, creating a budget, for example.
Yeah, I'm so impressed, Roy.
Yeah.
Your book is full of these practical suggestions. I mean, the pathway to gospel music success, how to succeed, the songs are everything, always get a second opinion on your songs, make your CD look great, you will need PR, you'll need a press kit, learn from people who are better than you, church ministry, performing live. There's list after list of practical suggestions. I think it's going to be amazingly helpful for all kinds of people in the gospel music business. Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
I was just thinking it's quite a dangerous mix, isn't it, that record labels not developing artists, but at the same time we're living in a world where there's more media spotlights than anything. You know, are we inevitably going to find more flaws in the artists because they've not been developed?
You may look at it that way, but it's more democratic. I mean, people can make music who once couldn't possibly make music.
In terms of their behaviour. So, for example, a record company would have dedicated days whereby they train you to deal with the media and not to do anything or to say anything stupid. Now, it seems if they're not developing artists, they're just going to be loose cannons, aren't they?
Well, the artists can develop themselves. I mean, it's taken the power away from the record companies.
Yeah.
It's given the power to the individual, to the artist. They can do things themselves. And thank God for Google. I mean, they got to Google, how can I be a good gospel artist? I'm sure Google's got an answer up there somewhere. So artists can learn these things. They can research the information. The information exists.
Yeah.
They have opportunity that's more democratic.
Yeah.
And they can make music. Anybody who now wants to make music can. How to make a success of it now is the issue.
That's the real question.
And does it mean as well that because the onus is more on the individual rather than the record label, does it mean that the only the dedicated will get through?
Cream always rises to the top.
Yeah.
So ultimately, the dedicated artists will break through, provided they've got the patience and bring people around them, and they acknowledge what they're doing and where they want to go, and have all the bits and pieces that they need to help them to succeed. But cream rises to the top. But I like the idea that it's a democratic time, that people want to make music they can, even if it's just for their family and their friends. They have this opportunity. People have burning desires, and this is such a great time.
Technology's enabled people to do that in their front rooms these days.
Yes.
Listen, I suggest, folks, that you Google the title of this, How to Make Gospel Music Work for You, because it's packed with brilliant suggestions on how to make it work for you. Literally. I highly recommend the book. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, if you've got a gospel choir in your church, dream of maybe going on tour, dreaming of making an album, wanting to take your music away from the church walls and sharing it, this book is for you.
And also just learning how the music has grown, is developed, how it operates, how to avoid the pitfalls, how to make success of it. It's all in the book, and it can be purchased from my website, rfproductions.co.uk.